Hello and welcome back to another Dev Diary video on Imperator Rome. This just came out here on Monday, October 19th, and it is by Trin Tregula, the game designer. I think the top guy over at the Imperator team in the top position there, the one with the most executive power, right? And he says to start off, "Hello and welcome to another development diary for Imperator Rome. Today I will be talking to you about some of the changes that are coming in the Marius update. It is still early days." So take any and all numbers and screenshots, numbers being balancing and the like, as what they are, a work in progress. Smiley face. Right, so this little clause here, they sort of snuck it in as if we wouldn't notice. Now, still early days. I feel like they're going to really great pains to tell us, Imperator Rome players who might be eager for the 2.0 release, that they really don't have a release date yet, and it's still a ways off. So they're referring to the development cycle, the 2.0 development cycle, as early days, and you know, their last patch came out. It's been a while already, so there's no indication here really when the release date is going to be, except that it probably won't be anytime soon. Yeah, so take that for what it's worth. But let's get into the meat of the Dev Diary this week. It's a lot about redoing the combat system, and the first thing they're going to talk about here is combat width. Now, combat width is a mechanic that's favored by the Paradox, the people over at Paradox. It's a mechanic that appears in several Paradox games, to my knowledge, and what it is in Imperator Rome, specifically, combat width is what determines the size of a battlefield. So units designated as primary ranks are deployed in the center, with units designated as second rank taking their place once they retreat from the battlefield. Then units designated as flankers are deployed on the sides. And in one of the tabs, in the military overview tab, currently in Imperator Rome, you can select which units are your primary unit, your secondary unit, and your flanking unit. And this, directly impacts how they engage enemies in battle. If unopposed to their direct front, units will target enemies diagonally as far away as their maneuver rating will allow. This means your flankers can start attacking the center of the enemy line if they can first defeat their counterparts in the enemy flank. It also means that you will have little use of your flankers until late in battle if the enemy line is completely filled. Right, and here's like a rework of what the unit screen should look like. The unit interface is changing a bit in Marius. Here's a partial peek at the work-in-progress version of it, and I like the look. As with the other UI changes that we've seen so far, I'm really sort of digging this look. There are some familiar buttons here, like we have the loyalty stack button here, which gives the army over to the local governor to increase the loyalty. We have the attach button, we have the build road button, drill, force march, reorganize, etc. Desecrate holy site, and I think this is the one where if your ruler is the leader or the general of the army, you go around getting loyalty buffs and the like, and a lot of these other buttons have already appeared, so I don't think the buttons are new, but they've rearranged them a bit. And the flank size 5, they've prominently displayed where it wasn't previously displayed. And here you sort of see how the heavy cav are the primary unit, and the light infantry are the secondary unit, and the light cav are the flanks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a flank size of 5, and that number matches this number. So it's a little bit intuitive like that. Okay, so the flank combat width is a thing that they're working on. Let's move on to these images. Now we get a bit of a look at a battle between what looks like the Antagonids and the Egyptians, or the Ptolemies. The Battle of Thenisos. Right. My pronunciation is really good. Okay, so this is just an opportunity for them to showcase a little bit about the combat width that they're talking about. Now, these armies only have one, it's looking like one light cav unit each, so the flanking doesn't really come to play. But the combat width here is definitely in play. As you see, the Antagonids have a major advantage. And there's another thing I'm noticing. So I have been speculating a little bit about how the numbers are going to work, and how they may or may not port the CK3 levy system over into Marius 2.0 for Imperator Rome, because they are doing a military rework, as evidenced partially by this by these combat width changes. And one thing, these look like full units. These are all full units, as in none of them have suffered any losses. They all have a nice even number, 500. They're all divisible by 500. The base unit in Imperator Rome currently is 1,000, so I'm thinking they've at least cut that number in half. As in a recent dev diary, they were talking about how they didn't like how the numbers were not particularly historically accurate. Now, I don't really think cutting them in half will provide that necessarily either. I think we need more of a rework than that, but I think that's at least the case. The base unit, 1 unit, so you raise 1 unit, which has been 1,000 is now 500. That's my takeaway from this image. And we do get, we get a little bit of a preview of what the updated look is going to be like, and I like it. I like it. Although it doesn't tell us that much about anything else. Okay. In the Marius update, combat width is no longer the same on every battlefield. Okay, just talking about combat width here. Instead, it is now dependent on what terrain you are fighting on, and this can vary quite a bit, from extreme cases such as mountainous terrain where the battlefield is only 16 positions wide, to sea battles in the open where the width is now 50. So this really, really, really makes a huge difference. Terrain already mattered. Of course. You can win a battle you might not otherwise win if you are tactically superior to your enemy. You are able to defend in mountains, for example, with some units that you have buffed or what have you. Now, the terrain did matter. It's always mattered, but now they're making it matter even more by applying this newly important element of combat width to it, which I really like. I think this is really, really cool. So they have slots, basically. There's positions, so 16 positions. So you can only fit 16 of these on a battlefield if it's mountainous terrain. So I'm gathering. I don't know if all mountainous terrain is the same, but the default mountainous terrain is 16 positions, whereas open sea battles are 50. This represents how crowded a mountainous fighting battle situation would be compared to an open one, where there's nothing in your way, as opposed to being, in a crowded, narrow mountain pass and the like. And it also indicates to me that you can hold a mountain pass with some good units, get some heavy infantry, some javelins, and just hold that position up in a mountain somewhere. And you can do so with fewer soldiers than you might have otherwise needed. Okay, to continue reading now. This allows us to better represent a dramatic variation of combat scenarios, that's what I was just referring to, and potentially opens up opportunities for ambushes, pitched warfare, and more. Choosing the place to give battle becomes as important as which subunits are present. Right, so, again, terrain has always mattered in the game. It's not like it didn't matter, but now it matters a lot more, and this totally changes how you go about trying to wage your war and how to besides sieges are probably the most important part of actually winning the war. But in terms of winning your battles, which is also crucially important, this really changes the tactics of all of that. You definitely want to, if you have more, say you're invading your enemy and you have more soldiers than they do, you want to catch them in the open field. You want your superior numbers to run them down in the open field because you can take advantage of your superior combat with the extra. They're calling this positions. So there are more positions that your troops can occupy. Since you have more troops than they do, they can occupy more positions and thus get better outcomes. You don't want to be facing them in mountains. It's sort of obvious, but that's the point to be made here. The variation in battles, dependent on the terrain, is really cool. I really like what they're going for with this, and hopefully the implementation is just as sweet. Right. The dramatic variation is a really cool thing. Choosing the place to give battle becomes as important as which subunits are present. I know, I just read that. Read it again. Right, so, and now here's an image as opposed to this one, which is a land battle. Looks like in marshes. Now, I don't see a number indicating the positions, how many positions are available for your soldiers to take. Is that this 18? I don't think so. Possibly. I mean, this says 30. So is this an open sea? Is it an open sea? I mean, we have this little rock here. It's possible that this is a type of... Okay, Battle of Mare Phoenicium. Can we get a... get a sense? No, I can't really tell. So, this 30... That might represent the combat width, and this 18. I can't be certain, but of all the numbers on these screens, I don't see what else would represent the combat width or the number of positions that units can occupy on the battlefield. Right, so 30. All right, so I had manually counted these out, and it is 30. So this number right now does indicate the number of open positions on a battlefield that you can fill with your units. If you have a number that's higher than this, you can fill up the whole line, and if you don't, then you're not. And that's why it's a lot better, of course, to have your larger numbers meet in the open field where you can fully take advantage of that. And if you are the one who is outnumbered, you need to run away. You need to find yourself some advantageous terrain from which to defend and get a victory where you might otherwise not. Additionally, there will be some locations where the width is further modified. For example, mountain passes like the famous gates where many historical battles took place. Such locations are now also marked with a 2D icon on the map itself. That's really cool. Such patches have been added to a number of locations all around the world. Right. The Amanian Gates is a famous one. So this gives you +4 attrition, not tradition, +4 attrition and -4 combat width additionally to the mountain terrain, I would imagine. So that's really cool. I like that a lot. That means that, hey, you need to make your last stand. You are under an attack from an enemy with superior armed forces. What are you going to do? You're going to run to the Amanian Gates. You're going to hold there with a smaller force and take advantage of the combat width and attrition. I mean, you're not just going to... Right. Let me backtrack slightly. Depending on how all the mechanics shake out in Marius, one thing that we might see is countries sort of going up into their gates to have a final stand, or to guard at just a crucial pass, and the like. Right, what this means is that it becomes less viable to trust that one army composition is as useful for all types of campaigns. That's interesting. In largely forested or hilly areas, your ability to flank will be much more limited. So if you know that you're fighting in high altitude or, not open field, forest, hills, mountains, your light cavalry is not going to be as valuable as it might be in the open field. And you need to really pay attention to this when you consider your army composition. So if you're going to be fighting in the open field, and I'm imagining like camels. Okay, if you're fighting in desert, you probably want a bunch of camels, and you probably don't want, say, heavy infantry, which is already the case, but they're probably going to make that more the case. You really need to think about your army composition as it applies to the goal of what you're trying to do in a given campaign, or in a given war, or in a given defense, or what have you. And I really like that they're going to make you think this way. They're going to make you strategize which army composition units are most fruitful for your particular situation, and it really has the potential to turn the tide, both in your favor and against you. At sea, on the other hand, this increases the danger of leaving your heavier ships unattended even further. Right, so heavier ships are slow, they can be outflanked, and they can be destroyed. The new system allows the potential number of enemy ships that can target a single isolated big vessel to be much higher. So this swarming effect that was already in place is now that much stronger. Forts. In the release version of the game, when you have broken through a fortified area, you currently have to spread out your troops to take control over the unfortified parts of the provinces you pass through. Right? That's how Paradox games typically have been. This is a process that can be both attention-intensive and not particularly rewarding or realistic. That's right. For the Marius update, we have been looking at ways to alleviate this, removing reasons to break your armies up into many small pieces and rewarding concentration of power a bit more. I like that a lot. Now, historically, I would go even further. I understand that this is a strategy game and you have to have your armies clash a lot and the like. But in the interest of historical immersion and realism, a lot of these wars that were fought in antiquity would really be determined just by one battle. You don't even need a siege. You don't have to carpet siege. You don't have to take over the whole country. you don't need to take over the capital. All you have to do is win a decisive battle. That was the case for a lot of these conflicts. So, like, to a classic example, the Battle of Ipsus, where Antigonus was slain. That was the end, and Demetrius was captured or fled or something. But because of the outcome of that one battle, that was the end of the Antigonid kingdom. Just done. So there's no way Imperator Rome has the means to represent that at all in game, as it would be faithful to the historical sources. But I like that they're going in that direction, because what matters is the decisive confrontation between two armies, not like how much territory you control, not if you have their capital or not. It's so, like, once Antigonus is slain and his son is incapacitated, the kingdom ceases to exist. There is no more Antigonid kingdom. The borders just go away. It's done. So I'm glad that they're moving in that direction. They want to keep the armies together so that you don't have to carpet siege stuff, and I really like that mode of thinking. It's more true to the history. Occupation. In the new update, occupation of all territories in a province will begin to progress as soon as you control all forts in that province. This means that when you are done taking control of the military installations of a province, your armies can move on and not split up to occupy all the territories in turn. In provinces that do not have any forts, it will be enough to occupy the province capital to trigger this behavior. Occupying the local capitals was already a good idea, since it gives your armies access to the provincial food storage, but this change further increases the importance of going after these important locations. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So, right after reading this sort of change in thinking about forts, we go sort of to reinforce the old thinking, which says that you have to have everything under your control to win, which I just don't agree with. That's not historical or immersive. But anyway, I digress. Let's talk about what it means, rather than just my opinion about it. We already had to control all the forts in a province to get a war goal or to have credit for, fully occupying things. And we already had to control the provincial capital. I guess they're just making that more important. So if you have control of all the forts, then that just cripples the enemy's ability to resupply, to wage war, to provide military supplies, and the like. Okay, this has the knockoff effect of reducing the need for carpet sieging behavior and makes large-scale warfare significantly less tedious. Good. Province Fort Limit. Province Fort Limit. Okay, let's take a look at this screenshot. It looks good. Yeah, the new UI, this import button, it looks great. All of this looks great. Okay, another change, partly because of the new importance of forts and partly because of how easy it has been to tie down invaders by building a great number of small forts, is the Provincial Fort Limit. I like this. Cannot spam forts. Whether the forts are in the new mold or the old mold, whatever, you don't want them to be spammed. This limit represents the degree to which the provincial infrastructure can support great fortifications, can be increased using a provincial investment. The starting limit for any province will be 5, and each new fort in the territory will make use of 3 fort infrastructure levels. Additional levels to existing forts only contribute 1 fort infrastructure level to the fort limit, encouraging building forts in important and influential places rather than in every territory. The fort limit is not a hard limitation. You can still build more forts that your province infrastructure can support, but fort levels beyond the limit will sharply increase the maintenance you pay for them. They may well be additional sources of this limit to account for historically well-defended locations. I love it. Okay, so they're not just giving each territory in a province like one, a limit of 1 or whatever. They're not just giving you 3. Like a lot of things in Paradox games, it's going to be modified to fit different circumstances, and it has to do with your infrastructure level rather than just, a flat, you can have 3 forts or whatever. And it really encourages you to think, again, strategically about where you're going to put them, because you have a limited amount of them, and you know that they cost a lot of money. And I do like that they don't put a hard limit on you. I love that. I love that they give you the freedom to decide, hey, I really need another fort here. I need another fort, despite my fort infrastructure level, and I'm willing to pay the outrageous costs of having that above our level. I like that they give you the choice. Right, engineer cohorts. I like this. Engineers. Fort warfare will also be affected by the introduction of a new engineer unit type. This unit represents troops specialized in sieges and the construction of military facilities, siege towers, roads, temporary bridges, etc. If present with an army laying siege to a fort, engineers will add +1 to every siege roll, divided by the fort level +1. Okay, well, the numbers are less important than the concept. That's awesome. We're going to have engineer units to reflect, siege ability, which I love. That's great. Engineers are also able to negate the crossing penalties that armies get for attacking cross rivers or straits. I like that they're trying to represent the importance of engineering in antiquity, like the logistics I said in the last video. The logistics of getting your army from point A to point B in this time period was no simple matter. In fact, people went to school to learn how to do it for years on end. And not that that's unique to this time period or anything, but logistics really matters. And I like that they're reflecting that with engineers. Now, this is before the start of the game, but when was it Tyre? When Alexander the Great was laying siege to the Phoenician cities during his conquest, he had his engineers build a huge bridge out to the city of Tyre so that he could lay siege to it. And now Alexander, of course, is famous for a lot of things, but with that particular event, the engineers made all the difference, and the engineering of it, and the marvel of the bridge that was built. And that really matters. It's not just your soldiers, it's not just your supplies, it's also your capacity for some unconventional methods and your ability to build stuff and know about different various tools you can use. So engineers, love it. Thumbs up on that one. Lastly, engineers are proficient in road building and will greatly reduce the cost to build new roads if they're present in an army ordered to construct roads. I love that too. So the armies, anybody can dig a hole, right? So the soldiers can still build a road, but you're going to have a better time of it if you have some engineers with you. The new unit type has an unusually high cost, both to recruit and to maintain, and it is also restricted in some ways that we will expand on later. In later diaries. That was all for today when it comes to changes related to warfare. Now it comes time for a change coming to how to handle trade. Provincial Trading. So this is a big dev diary covering both war and trade. How exciting for us. And one other new feature coming to the Mayor's update is the ability to assign control over trade to your governors. Oh, I like that a lot. The trade spam is one of the largest complaints from the player community of this game. It's just, trade offer. That sound just keeps popping up constantly, and it gets really annoying. Now, there have been some efforts to curtail that by enabling auto decline and the like. It's not enough. It's really not enough. So if we let just our governors do it, they can get things that they need to get the amenities up and all that. This is done on a provincial level, meaning you can decide to have some provinces under the control of your governor while still manually handing others. Good. Great. So you still maintain all the freedom you want. The governors will try to get profitable routes set up while also securing access to food for their territories, but we'll expect to have total control over what is theirs. So there's some trade-off, and the food issue also, especially in 1.5, I have to say. Although there's massive improvements, the food with that, the amount of starving pops that I had in my last playthrough with the most recent update is more than it was when game launched. So I don't know what that's all about. Hopefully giving your governors control will alleviate that. Hopefully they'll know how to keep your people fed unless it's just impossible. Right. Lastly is the Atlas map mode, which looks great. So they teased at this last time. I suggested it was some sort of religious site marker because all of these sites were temples, or at least a plurality or majority of them were. And yeah, I really like the Atlas map mode. This map mode is provided as a flavorful way of displaying your national situation and is inspired by the appearance of historical atlases. As your important cities and locations grow, you'll take on a more prominent appearance. I love it. So we have temples, we have cities, and bigger cities. So Alexandria here has a bigger star because it's a more prominent spot. And I guess in this In this screenshot, you're playing as the Antigone Kingdom, right? And you're fighting Egypt. And you can see Alexandria, and it's just as prominent. It's more prominent, in fact, than anything you can see of your own territory. Damascus, but not Jerusalem. So, okay, my last point for today is to show the new map mode that we are adding together with the interface rework in Marius. It aims at showing information at a glance in a way that could be useful for after-action reports, screenshots, or if you just want to admire your world in a way reminiscent of the historical atlases that most of us enjoy. That was all for this week. Next week we will be back for more about the new features of the Marius update. Great. So I like it. I like pretty much everything that was in here. I'm glad that they're thinking outside the box with forts. I hope they continue thinking outside the box with forts. And now that we're here on the forum, one thing I do want to point out is the game director Trin Tregula was kind enough to reply to just a random topic in the forums. However, it's slightly disappointing because what he said is this is about the dearth of suitable betrothals you can have toward the end of the campaign, or it's hard to get married a lot of the time, especially when you're very, very powerful. So this has been often asked for. We need a marriage rework, basically, and I know we can't get everything in this update, but Trin Tregula here is indicating that we should not be expecting a marriage rework in the Marius update, unfortunately. But that's all for me. So please comment, like, share, subscribe, hit that bell notification button, and we'll see you in the next Dev Diary. Bye-bye.